There's a version of your future that already exists. You just haven't met him yet. He's standing alone in a high-rise apartment overlooking a city that once felt impossibly far away. His phone lights up every few seconds. Investors, clients, friends, people asking for advice, people asking for opportunities, people asking for money. By every visible measure, he won. But tonight, he's staring through the glass at a skyline worth billions and thinking about a question nobody asks successful people. What did it cost? And the strange thing is, the story doesn't start with wealth. It starts with a form, a single piece of paper, and a 19-year-old kid who is about to disappoint everyone he loves. October. A university campus. The trees are beginning to turn orange. Students move between buildings carrying backpacks and coffee cups. Everyone appears to know where they're going. Everyone except you. You sit in a lecture hall with 300 other students. The professor is speaking, slides are changing, pens are moving, people are taking notes, and suddenly a thought appears, quietly, dangerously. What if none of this is for me? Not because you're lazy, not because you're smarter, not because you've discovered some secret, because something feels wrong, like wearing shoes that fit everyone else but somehow hurt your feet. You ignore the feeling. Most people do, for weeks, then months. But some feelings don't disappear, they grow, and that's where the trouble begins, because once you see a question, you can't unsee it. 3 weeks later, you walk into the registrar's office. The woman behind the counter asks if you've completed the withdrawal form. You nod. Your hand hesitates, just for a second, because you know something important. Life is divided into before and after moments, and this might be one of them. You hand her the paper. She stamps it. Done. 19 years old. $340 in your bank account. No degree. No plan, no roadmap, just the strange conviction that staying would be worse than leaving. Nobody warns you about this part, the moment after freedom, when freedom feels suspiciously similar to fear. Your father doesn't yell. That almost makes it worse. At dinner, he asks one question. What now? You answer with the truth. I don't know. The room goes quiet. Your mother looks down at her plate. Your father nods once. The conversation moves on, but it never really moves on, because from that day forward, every interaction carries an invisible question. Did you just ruin your life? The first year is not inspiring. This is where most success stories lie, not because they're hiding it, because nobody wants to hear it. You work at a coffee shop, early mornings, late nights, minimum wage. You clean tables, take orders, smile at customers, then come home exhausted and spend hours watching business videos nobody around you cares about. The internet becomes your university. You study entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, human psychology, storytelling. You read while your friends are at parties. You take notes while everyone else is sleeping. And here's the strange thing. Nothing changes, not immediately. The effort and the reward feel completely disconnected for months, then longer. And this is where most people quit, not because they're incapable, because the silence becomes unbearable. At 20 years old, your first business fails. A small online store, months of work, a handful of sales, then nothing, gone. You lose money, you lose confidence, you lose certainty. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is telling nobody. Pretending everything is okay, pretending you're still moving forward, pretending you haven't started wondering if everyone was right. Then the second business fails. Different idea, same outcome. And something interesting happens. You stop being afraid of failure, because failure keeps showing up, and somehow you're still here. Nobody tells you this. Repeated failure doesn't always destroy confidence. Sometimes it builds resilience. You stop seeing failure as a verdict. You start seeing it as tuition. At 21, something changes. Not dramatically, not overnight. A local business asks for help creating videos. You say yes, then another, then another. Soon you're editing content every day. You become obsessed, not with video editing, with attention. Why do people watch? Why do they click? Why do they stay? You study human behavior for thousands of hours, and eventually something magical happens. People begin paying you. Not a lot, just enough. Enough to prove the market cares. Enough to keep going. Enough to make doubt slightly quieter. The first $5,000 month arrives on a random Wednesday. Nobody throws a party. Nobody notices. You sit in your car looking at your banking app. $5,000. You stare at the screen because the money isn't the important part. The important part is what the money represents. Evidence, proof, validation. The first tiny crack in the narrative everyone wrote about your future. Maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're building something. At 22, you move into your own apartment. Small, nothing special, but it's yours. And for the first time, your future feels real. You hire someone, then another person, then another. A system begins forming. You stop trading hours. You start building leverage. Most people misunderstand wealth. They think wealth is money. It isn't. Wealth is systems. Money is just the receipt. And this realization changes everything. Revenue grows, clients multiply, the business expands. On paper, life looks incredible, but this is where the hidden consequences begin. Success creates distance. At first, it's small, barely noticeable. A missed birthday, a canceled weekend, a phone call you forgot to return. Nothing dramatic, just tiny fractures, tiny sacrifices, tiny compromises, the kind that seem harmless until years pass. At 23, your friends still talk about promotions, raises, vacation plans, office politics. You smile, you participate, but something feels different now. You're living in a different reality, not better, different. Your problems are no longer their problems. Their concerns are no longer yours. And slowly, almost invisibly, the gap widens. Nobody fights, nobody argues, but distance doesn't need conflict. Distance only needs time. Then comes the plateau, the dangerous phase. Not failure, not success, comfort. Your business earns enough money. Life is stable. The future looks okay. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. Comfort whispers, you've done enough. Slow down. Relax. Enjoy it. And this is where most people stop growing. Not because they fail, because they become satisfied. One night you open a spreadsheet. You project your future. The numbers tell a story. If everything stays the same, you'll be comfortable, but never free. That realization hits harder than failure ever did, because failure creates urgency. Comfort creates stagnation. So you change everything again. You restructure the business, raise prices, improve systems, focus on outcomes instead of services. Clients pay more, results improve, revenue explodes. And suddenly you're earning more money than your parents ever imagined, more than your professors predicted, more than your 19-year-old self believed possible. And yet the strangest thing happens. You don't feel richer. You feel responsible. Because success doesn't remove pressure, it often multiplies it. At 25, an acquisition offer arrives. Life-changing money. The kind of number that once felt fictional. You spend weeks thinking, negotiating, questioning, doubting. Then you sign. Days later, the money arrives. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Real, liquid, yours. You sit alone in your car. No celebration, no dramatic music, just silence. Because the victory feels different than expected. You thought you'd feel complete. Instead, you feel curious. If this wasn't the finish line, what was? And this is where most people misunderstand ambition. They think ambitious people are chasing money. Often they're chasing possibility. Money just keeps score. The real addiction is expansion, building, creating, solving, becoming. So you start another company, because that's who you've become. By 27, your net worth approaches $2 million. The investments are growing. The business is growing. The opportunities are growing. And so is the loneliness. Not extreme loneliness, a quieter version, the kind successful people rarely discuss. You can enter almost any room, but fewer people understand your life. You can solve financial problems, but some emotional problems become harder. You have freedom, yet freedom creates separation, and nobody warned you about that. Then comes the moment that changes everything. Not a business deal, not an investment, not a financial milestone. A phone call. A family member is sick. You drive for hours, sit beside a hospital bed, and suddenly none of the numbers matter. Not revenue, not valuation, not net worth, not growth. Time becomes the only currency that feels real, and that's when you understand something. The goal was never money. The goal was control over your time. Money was simply the tool. At 28, your net worth crosses $3 million. The headline sounds impressive. People online celebrate. Friends congratulate you. Strangers admire the outcome. But they don't see the full story. They don't see the failed businesses, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the lonely nights, the relationships that faded, the opportunities missed, the years spent betting on a future nobody could guarantee. They only see the ending, not the cost. And maybe that's why these stories are so dangerous. People copy the outcome without understanding the journey. They see the millions, they don't see the sacrifices. They see freedom, they don't see fear. They see confidence, they don't see doubt. They see the highlight reel, they never see the invoice. Years earlier, everyone thought the withdraw form was the important moment. It wasn't. The important moment happened every day afterward. Every morning you kept going without evidence. Every night you continued despite uncertainty. Every decision made when success was still invisible. That's what changed your life. Not courage, consistency. Not talent, persistence. Not certainty, faith. And if there is a lesson hidden inside this story, it isn't that everyone should leave college. Many shouldn't. Many will thrive there. Many will build extraordinary lives through traditional paths. That's never been the point. The point is something far quieter. Your future is rarely created by one dramatic decision. It's created by thousands of invisible ones, repeated over years, long after the excitement disappears, long after nobody's watching, long after doubt becomes familiar. Because in the end, wealth was never really about becoming rich. It was about buying options, buying time, buying flexibility, buying the ability to be present when life asks something important of you. And standing in that apartment overlooking the city, the 28-year-old version of you finally understands something the 19-year-old never could. The money wasn't the reward, the freedom was. And even freedom comes with a price. The only question is whether the version of yourself waiting in the future believes it was worth paying.